Deep in the arid expanse of Rajasthan, hours away from any major metropolis, sits an isolated village surrounded by sun-baked dunes. Yet every year, this quiet desert town swells into an immense gathering. Millions of pilgrims walk 17 kilometers barefoot from the nearest station of Ringas, carrying heavy flags known as nishans, until they form a dense, inescapable sea of humanity at the water's edge. They don't endure this journey for tourism. They come because of a well-documented string of anomalies. In 2019, doctors at a major Delhi hospital told the family of a dying businessman from Sikar that his organs were failing. His wife immediately traveled here, making a vow at the temple. The very next day, his condition stabilized so rapidly that medical staff had no clinical explanation. And his case is one of thousands. Then there is the physical mystery of the Shyam Kund, a large water reservoir. Geologists and local engineers have repeatedly tried to map its source, but there are no visible inlets from above, and no subterranean springs have ever been confirmed beneath it. Despite this, the water level remains constant, never drying up. When you combine millions of people migrating on foot through the heat to a town with a scientifically unmapped water source and a massive catalog of medical recoveries, you are looking at a highly localized psychological phenomenon. People are converging here because they are seeking the impossible. The site also carries a strange historical resilience. In the 17th century, the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb dispatched his army to systematically dismantle the religious structures in this region, including an ancient Shiva monument located just steps from the main Khatu temple. According to accounts from that day, soldiers struck the rough-hewn stone with their spears, expecting it to shatter. Instead, a dark red liquid began seeping out from the impact wound. The physical shock of seeing a stone bleed caused the entire unit to retreat, leaving the site completely untouched. But the real mystery lies inside the central temple. If you walk into almost any traditional Hindu sanctuary, you will find a full-bodied representation of a deity. Here, the inner sanctum is entirely different. When those millions of pilgrims finally reach the end of their barefoot walk, they collapse in tears, offering their life savings and their deepest prayers to a disembodied, severed head. To understand how an isolated head commands this level of devotion in the modern world, we have to look past the current architecture. We have to map the timeline back thousands of years to the Mahabharata, to a specific character whose rules of engagement created a dangerous vacuum. In the Mahabharata era, the bloodline of the Pandavas produced a warrior named Barbarik. As grandson of the powerhouse Bhima, he was bred for combat. His mother guided him to undergo severe ascetic training to please Lord Shiva. As a result, Shiva granted him a devastating tactical asset: 3 infallible arrows capable of wiping out any military force on Earth. The mechanics of these weapons were precise and terrifying. The first arrow would deploy to mark all the targets the archer wanted to destroy. The second arrow could mark everything he wanted to save. The third arrow would then execute the destruction of the marked targets and immediately return to his quiver. But this immense power came with a highly restrictive operational rule. Before heading to the Great War of Kurukshetra, Barbarik made a solemn promise to his mother. He would only fight for the losing side. He was, effectively, a walking weapon of mass destruction, held in check only by a strict personal code of absolute empathy for the defeated.
As Barbarik rode toward the battlefield, he was intercepted by a Brahmin. This was Lord Krishna in disguise, intentionally stepping into Barbarik's path to audit the logic of his vow before letting him reach the front lines. Look at this schematic mapping the armies. If Barbarik joined the weaker side, his arrows would instantly decimate the winning army, making them the new losers. Forced by his vow, he'd switch sides, triggering an infinite loop of destruction until he was the sole survivor. To test the physical accuracy of the arrows, Krishna challenged him to pierce every leaf on a nearby tree with a single shot. The arrow cleanly pierced the canopy, then shot down, hovering directly over Krishna's foot, actively targeting a single leaf hidden under his heel. The test proved 2 things: the weapons could not be evaded, and Barbarik's honorable promise was actually a mathematical trigger for the total annihilation of every participant in the war. To prevent a total system failure, Krishna invoked a drastic measure. He asked the warrior for Shishdan, the charity of his own head. Recognizing Krishna's true divine form, Barbarik calmly drew a blade and decapitated himself. Krishna preserved the head, placing it on a high vantage point so Barbarik could witness the entire war. He also issued a prophecy. In the coming era, the Kali Yuga, people would worship this severed head under Krishna's own name, Shyam. Fast forward to the year 1027 AD. In the desert village of Khatu, locals observed a highly unusual event. A cow repeatedly stood over a specific barren patch of earth, naturally releasing her milk directly onto the dry dirt. When the villagers finally dug into that exact patch of soil, they unearthed an ancient, perfectly preserved head. Following a divine dream, King Rup Singh Chauhan constructed the first iteration of the temple exactly where the head was found. This head represents the physical remnant of the universe's greatest act of preventative sacrifice, the price paid to stop a cosmic disaster before it could begin. Today, the ancient prophecy operates under a very specific title, Hare Ka Sahara, which translates to the savior of the defeated. The conflict has simply migrated. The battleground is no longer the open plains of Kurukshetra. The fight happens in oncology wards, in failing businesses, and in households collapsing under debt. When people hit a wall in these modern struggles, they look to Barbarik. He possessed the capacity to dominate the world, yet willingly allowed himself to be disarmed. He represents someone who understands what it means to hold immense potential and choose to give it away. The massive crowds at Khatu Shyam seek out a god who deeply understands total vulnerability, preferring a symbol of sacrifice over a display of supreme power. That 17-kilometer trek from Ringos through the blistering heat serves a very specific function. The exhaustion of the body acts as a mechanism to offload the heavy, invisible burdens that people carry in their day-to-day lives. By the time they cross the threshold of the sanctum, the physical fatigue strips away their defenses. They stand before the severed head, weep openly, and literally drop their personal failures on the floor of the temple. Barbarik held 3 arrows that could have made him the absolute ruler of the earth, but he achieved immortality the second he laid his weapons down. Khatu Shyam stands as evidence that true power resides in a person's willingness to surrender, rather than the weapons they are capable of wielding.